Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News. Special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. A reminder as well that you can download our One Spot Media app in the Google Play Store or the App Store. That's the number 1 followed by the words Spot and Media. The opposition spokesman on national security is calling on the government to clamp down on the illegal cigarette trade as it is fueling organized crime.
We don't know what the contents are. We certainly not collecting any revenues from them, and somebody is making a lot of money in this industry. And this is undoubtedly not only putting our population at risk, but one of the things fueling organized crime in Jamaica and corrupting the customs and the whole regulatory system.
And for Dr. Fenton Ferguson, he is urging the police to enforce the ban on smoking in public spaces.
There are places operating uptown and downtown where persons are still smoking, which is infringing on the rights of citizens who are non-smokers.
Meanwhile, the health minister says the health subcommittee of the Cannabis Licensing Authority is working on a number of initiatives to protect the public's interest. These include ethical guidelines for medicinal cannabis research, medicinal cannabis cards, training programs for physicians, and the registration of cannabis products. Dr. Christopher Tufton pointed to a study by the National Council on Drug Abuse, which showed that 28% of the population used cannabis at some point in their life. 70% of the population reported having easy access to the commodity.
Laws concerning possession and smoking of cannabis will lead, Mr. Speaker, from a public health perspective, in our opinion, to a breakdown in law and order and deterioration of non-smokers' rights to enjoy a smoke-free environment, especially in public spaces. Indeed, appropriate regulations must focus on protecting public health. Policy structures must be based on the need to keep harm to a minimum and should be guided, we believe, by what the science concludes.
The health minister adds that $50 million is being spent on a public education campaign to discourage smoking. The passage of the bill to implement the National Identification System will help to fast-track legislation to make it mandatory for a father's name to be included on his child's birth certificate. Prime Minister Andrew Holness made that declaration yesterday in the House of Representatives. He was responding to questions from Member of Parliament for Central Kingston, Ronnie Thwaites.
During the course of that debate, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that many of the rights issues will come up and probably could be resolved in the debate, which would then help us to fast-track the legislation. The legislation is drafted. In fact, I had a chance to review it, but it is in conflict with some of the human rights considerations. So once we have this entire debate on identity and the right to identity, and those issues are resolved, then I would say certainly we could seek to have these matters closed before this year, calendar year, is out.
An absence of chlorinated water at some of the island's major catchment water tanks is causing concern among health officials. Chief Public Health Inspector for St. James, Lennox Wallace, says samples taken from a catchment area operated by the National Water Commission (NWC) indicated that there was insufficient chlorine in the water.
A little under 50% of those samples that we would have taken, we would have seen 0 chlorine residual. We would have called the Water Commission. However, they would have responded immediately to effect remedial measures to these supplies. So at this moment that we are speaking, they are currently meeting public health standards.
He noted, however, that the percentage is more alarming at water catchment facilities operated by the St. James Municipal Corporation.
From those supplies run by the St. James Municipal Corporation, and over 60% of them do not have chlorine residual.
In response, Mr. Lennox says the health department will go into communities to advise persons to boil their water until the facilities are properly chlorinated. 4 persons were shot, 2 fatally, in Lambs River, Westmoreland yesterday morning. Those killed are identified as 32-year-old Kenton Castell and 34-year-old Garfield Francis. The other men are in critical condition in hospital. Reports indicate that at about 11:30, 2 motor vehicles were traveling in different directions when one of the vehicles blocked the path of the other. Men alighted from the vehicle, causing the blockage, and opened gunfire on the occupants of the other vehicle. The 4 men inside sustained bullet wounds. Meanwhile, 4 men were also shot, 2 fatally, on Barnett Street in Montego Bay, St. James last night. One of the deceased has been identified as 36-year-old Devon Atkinson, a taxi driver of Lilliput. The other man is known only by his alias Dread. Reports indicate that the men were among other persons at the taxi park in the vicinity of the old fire station when explosions were heard. Persons were seen running from the area. Police officers who were nearby responded and found 4 men with bullet wounds. They were taken to hospital where 2 were pronounced dead. Police Commissioner George Coelho says 2 men who were intercepted shortly after last week's murder of businessman Richard Randall on Ruthven Road in St. Andrew are not suspects in the case. The police high command has launched a probe into reports that the cops held the suspected killers of Mr. Randall but later released them. The police commissioner told our news center that the 2 men were again picked up yesterday.
They are employees of a prominent institutions. They were interviewed, the car searched, car processed. The men are now giving statements to account for the whereabouts and the day in question. It's just unfortunate that these 2 men were at this location and one of them actually run and jumped in the car, not because he had committed an offense, but because he too was trying to get away from what was happening at the time.
And the police commissioner gave an update on the probe into Mr. Randall's murder.
The investigations are on in earnest, and we're asking any member of the public who have information that can help us to come forward and give us those information.
Mr. Randall, a motor vehicle dealer, was driving his Mercedes-Benz SUV when he was fatally shot by 2 men on Wednesday afternoon. Investigators say it was a contract-style killing. The Barrett Town community in St. James is on the road to recovery following a spate of crime and violence in the community. 4 people were brutally killed in the community last month. In response, the police and military personnel were deployed to Barrett Town. Residents are grateful for the presence of the security forces.
It's okay because the police them around the place more safer. And at 2 o'clock I'm on the street, so I feel more safe. And when I look to see police and soldiers them come up.
Well, if you right, I know the police them in our place, so you kind of much better, you know, since the last shooting. You know, because before that we couldn't even go nowhere and go party or do nothing like that and then style. Every man went coward and then style. But since the officer them in our place and the soldier them and then style, we feel much better, you know, feel more safer, you know. Look like things are out to come back the way it used to be before.
Meanwhile, Councillor for the Rose Hall Division, Anthony Murray, says plans are underway for a social intervention program to improve the community.
All right, we are working with some agencies, the Ministry of National Security and also CSJP and PMI. They are putting in some social programs that will build back the community, as well as council. I've been having meetings with the community to build back a level of togetherness. In fact, come next week we'll be starting our summer camp program, which we're going to be focusing on sports. Where different areas of the community will come together, come out and work and play and have fun so that they can gel together again as it was in the past.
Fishermen from the Green Island Fishing Beach in Hanover are concerned about the actions of the police. At about 11 p.m. on Friday, the fishermen say police entered the village and destroyed a shop for one of their members, leaving it unprotected. The shop owner says thieves now have complete access to everything in the shop. He further explained what happened.
Friday evening, some police come by my fishing village and they take out some of my family out of the house like that. They say, all right, come and get me pull the shop. I understand, say the policeman said, no, kick off the door, mash up if on Friday night the shop can't lock. So We have no idea why cars by, and we can't leave things like this. On Friday night, nobody come back.
He says the police did not state why they wanted to access his shop. The fisherman fears he will have a similar experience when the shop is repaired.
So we would like to find out what the reason all of this happened. You understand? Because as far as me see, we have to fix up about ourselves. And fix it back ourselves again. No police come find what happened. What about if they come back under the same thing? How we don't go work it? You understand? Because we don't go fix up the back and we can't live like this.
When contacted, the Green Island Police said they were not aware of any operations conducted in that area. The National Council on Education NCE is concerned about the recent upsurge in crime and violence committed by males. Speaking at a NCE meeting yesterday, social anthropologist Dr. Herbert Gale, who specializes in social violence, shared some of his research on the issue. Dr. Gale acknowledges that the attempts of the government, but says more can be done.
Out of a homicide rate on average of 48 per 100,000, in a year where it is 50 per 100,000 and we extrapolate, it is likely to be 61 per 100,000 when the year ends. Can't shoot your way out of that.
He says the problem lies in the lack of educational and social support for males.
The more you educate people, is the less risk they take and the less business they do. But in our context, the more you educate people, is the less they are likely to be violent and to commit acts that are spontaneous and without thought.
Dr. Gale maintains that the only fix to the current crime problem is to invest in young males. Another house fire has again raised concerns about the efficiency of the Jamaica Fire Brigade, even as the latest fire victims question whether arson may have been the reason for the blaze. It happened about 6 o'clock yesterday evening in George's Pen near Fourth Baths, Clarendon.
I have a whole auntie and my son live. And I just finished look after her, put her to sit down in the living room. And I was sitting down there for a little while because I said I was going to get a shower. And I heard like something throwing, like somebody throwing something. By the time I got towards the kitchen, the fire was raging through the kitchen already. So all I could do, I called my son and tell him to go around to see if he can get some water to throw. By the time we're trying to throw water, it starts. So all I could do is take out my hand. My hand can't walk. So I try and take her out outside.
There are some fire hydrants here, but there's no water. So the National Water Commission lines are dry. The fire brigade now, I think it's his third trip it's making. And really it's a sad situation.
And as investigations continue into the cause of the blaze, appeals are being made for help on behalf of the victims, which include a single father of 4 young children. The National Solid Waste Management Authority NSWMA received 4 new garbage trucks for its regional offices recently. Each region is to receive 1 truck to assist with regular garbage collection across the island. Speaking at the ceremony, Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie says the trucks are intended to improve the efficiency of the agency.
Of garbage trucks. It is the last of the 17 trucks that the previous administration committed funding for. The additional 11 that we have provided will come in September, and then we have provided an additional $250 million more. So by next year we should be almost up to a position where we are comfortable, not where we want to be, but in a much more comfortable space than we are presently now.
Executive Director of the NSWMA, Audley Gordon, said one of the main reasons for the excess garbage and rat infestation across the country is improper garbage disposal.
In how we package our garbage, it is something that is not being played enough, but it's very important. No matter how much time the truck come to your home, if you throw meat, bones and the refuse of food, leftover food out the back of your yard, rat will feed on that.
And it's time now for a look at what's coming up in this evening's health report.
In the next edition of the Health Report, we look at uterine fibroids.
If they have finished childbearing, that is what we would recommend. That, of course, is a surgical procedure. So most of my patients, or many of my patients on the clinic here, require that procedure. We don't have a theater here, so what we were doing is actually having patients, Falmouth Hospital accommodated us, so we would do our surgery. If these patients would go from Hanover to Trelawney to do their surgery.
That's the Health Report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's healthy living tip. There is no known treatment that prevents uterine fibroids. However, exercise regularly, manage your weight, and drink green tea or green tea extract may help.
And in sports, course specialist Crucial Appeal to be ridden by former champion jockey Shane Ellis for trainer Dwight Chen is the 2-1 second choice in the morning line odds for today's open allowance contest over 5 furlongs straight at Caymanas Park. Former sprint champion Poker Star, who is yet to win from 4 starts this season, is the 7-5 champion, with jockey Omar Walker riding for champion trainer Wayne DaCosta. The small lineup is completed by Action Man with Paul Francis, Royal Assault, Wesley Henry, Choo Choo Blue with Javel Pattison, Polly B of the Mount of Hakeem Pottinger, and Sir Budget to be ridden by Anthony Thomas. First post starts at 1 p.m. with live coverage on TVJ Sports Network and Hits 92 FM. And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.